Republican J.D. Vance is in the U.S. Senate representing Ohio because Donald Trump endorsed him in the 2022 election. Former Republican President Trump, who has turned Ohio blood red and is poised to challenge Democratic President Joe Biden in November, is not only the soul of the National Republican Party, but he has a political stranglehold on the once purple Buckeye State. In his 2020 re-election bid for president, which he lost to Biden, but continues to impart the big lie that the election was stolen from him, Trump dominated the race in Ohio. He received 53.2% of the 5.7 million votes cast to Biden's 45.2%. In the 2022 senatorial election, in which Vance and longtime Mahoning Valley Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan were vying for the seat vacated by Republican Rob Portman, the Republican political newcomer received 53% of the 4 million or so votes cast to Ryan's 46%. It's clear that Vance was nothing more than Trump's surrogate in that election, just as wealthy Cleveland businessman Bernie Moreno is in this year's U.S. Senate race in Ohio. The seat is held by Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, who is in his third six-year term. Brown is considered one of the most at-risk Democratic incumbents in this year's national senatorial sweepstakes. Moreno, who has centered his campaign on the former president's endorsement, is being challenged for the Republican nomination by State Senator Matt Dolan and Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose. Thus the question: will Trump's endorsement prove to be the elixir for Moreno as it was for Vance? I'm Bertram de Souza, retired editorial page editor and Sunday columnist of the now closed Youngstown Vindicator. I wrote extensively about local, state, and national politics over the 40 years I was with the newspaper. It's not an exaggeration to say that today's Republican Party in Ohio is defined and directed by one man, Donald Trump. I've invited two veterans of Ohio politics to discuss the battle for the GOP nomination for the U.S. Senate in the March 19 primary. They are Dr. Bill Binning, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at Youngstown State University, and a one-time Republican Party insider locally and on the state level. And Tom Suddes, veteran journalist who was a Cleveland Plain Dealer reporter for many years. Suddes continues to write a Sunday column for the newspaper. Anyway, Bill and Tom, thanks for joining me to discuss one of the most closely watched races in next Tuesday's primary in Ohio. At the conclusion, I'll ask each of you to predict the outcome of the Republican battle for the U.S. Senate seat. But let's begin with this. Governor Mike DeWine and his wife, Fran, and former U.S. Senator Rob Portman and his wife, Jane, have flexed their political muscles in endorsing State Senator Matt Dolan for the GOP nomination for the U.S. Senate. In so doing, they have taken on the titular head of the National Republican Party, Donald Trump, who has publicly and vocally endorsed Cleveland businessman Bernie Moreno. Why would DeWine and Portman throw political caution to the wind? Tom, let me start with you, and then we'll go to Bill. Discuss this whole, DeWine and Portman making an endorsement and all of that.
Well, I think that the governor is a very cautious person, as we all know. I don't think he would make an endorsement unless he thought he had a chance of moving the needle, so to speak, in favor of Senator Senator Dolan. He is now in the state Senate. That said, it's really hard to say because of the fact that the polling's been so conflicting lately about the two leaders in the race, Mr. Moreno and Mr. Dolan. I can't speak for Senator Portman. He also is a very cautious guy, but certainly it's fair to say that Mr. Dolan has been much more congruent with the kind of republicanism of Mr. Portman and Mr. DeWine than
Right.
Mr. Moreno has been, certainly. And secondly, I think there probably is an honest belief that Mr. Dolan can more likely beat Senator Brown than can Mr. Marino. Keep in mind, by the way, that there's no love lost between Senator Brown and Mr. DeWine. Senator DeWine, of course, was defeated in 2006 by Sherrod Brown in the first place for re-election. So there's no bad blood either, but there's not like he's pulling for him or anything. The other thing I think reflects a fundamental split in the Republican Party in Ohio. Now, Dr. Binning would know better than I about this, but I think there's a real bifurcation between what I would call not traditional, but let's say historic Republicans in the state, and a new crowd of, shall we say, feisty people in the state that's like Mr. Trump's brand of politics. I think part of it is the establishment, quote unquote, Republicans wanting to keep a hold of a seat that they think should be theirs, or get a hold of a seat they think should be theirs for the foreseeable future. But that's my reading of it right now. I don't know. I was surprised myself that he did that because he said he wasn't going to. And also, I wasn't surprised by Mr. Portman because I figured that's kind of where he is anyway, politically speaking. But Mr. DeWine is a very, very cautious politician.
Sure.
And I don't think he would stick his neck out unless he thought there was a chance of moving the needle.
Bill, your take on this?
Well, I think the polling data, as shaky as it is, very difficult to poll primaries, and it looks like it's a jump ball race. It looks like Dolan and Marino. Either one of them right now, they're the top two. Either one of them could win. I don't really know who you would say has momentum, but so that's one reason. One reason you don't endorse a candidate doesn't have any chance to win. If Dolan has a chance to win the race. So I think that's one reason. I think the other reason, beyond what Tom's saying about they reflect a different tradition, set of views about the Republican Party. I think neither one of them, Foreman or DeWine, have nothing to lose to cross Trump. They're not going to be Ambassador DeWine, right, or Secretary of State Portman, or Budget Director Portman in this Trump administration. So they can needle Trump. They're not on the list to get anything. They're not going to get anything. They'd be lucky if it will be surprising, and probably now they won't even get on the podium when and if Trump comes to Ohio to campaign. Might not have to, because he's probably going to win without campaigning in Ohio very much. So that's my take. In other words, it's an opportunity to elect somebody that they probably like better, Dolan, more in line with their thinking. And two, I don't think that they risk much. Neither one of them are going to be on the ballot again, and neither one of them are going to be ambassador to Japan.
Yeah, but as you pointed out, Bill, Trump, would win Ohio even if he didn't campaign in Ohio because of how popular he is. With his appearing for Marino, I think Tom said would be tomorrow, right?
I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah, would that make a difference, do you think, especially Tom, are you aware of the latest story about Marino that has caused some kind of consternation in the campaign about some kind of an adult website or something like that?
I saw the story, yes.
Okay, does that have legs, do you think?
I don't know what to think about it one way or the other. There's so much justified skepticism about the web in general and what's on it and how it got there and so forth. Although I will say it was an Associated Press story, right, and the Associated Press is extremely careful about what it does,
right,
on things like that. And so therefore the credibility of the reporters is very high, I think. But the explanation the campaign offered for why the possible senator's name was in this list of people that subscribed or posted as a plausible explanation, I think, that an intern or an employee at his company had done this as kind of a prank way back when. It's not an incredible story. It's very possible it could be on target, but I think what the larger thing about consternation is I think there's a lot of nervousness, and this is just instinct from a distance, about where Marino and Dolan stand vis-a-vis each other right now. I think there's a sense, and it's just instinct. That's all. I'm often wrong. I would have won the lottery if I were right about anything. That Dolan's in the ascendant right now, in a head-to-head with Marino, and I think anything that could contribute to that could make a difference either way, such as that story possibly. But beyond that, I don't know.
Okay, what does Trump's presence on behalf of Marino do, if anything?
Well, I couldn't decide why he was going to Dayton particularly, because it seemed to me that Southwest Ohio might be a stronger.
Sure.
Well, maybe it was the maximum turnout, but for Marino, but I couldn't figure out what the reason was for that particularly, because it seems to me that Dolan can do reasonably well in northern and northeast Ohio and middle Ohio and so forth. I think in the primary last time he carried Lake, maybe Jaga, but certainly Cuyahoga and Franklin for the race for the nomination. So I don't know why they chose Dayton. I'm sure they have the world's greatest poll takers and trendsetters and counters and everything else. Maybe they know what they're doing. They probably do. That's why they won an election one time before. But I don't know. I think if it's to get enthusiasm for the president, ex-president himself, that's one thing. But I also think that he doesn't do much that isn't self-serving. So it's probably as much about his own campaign against Mr. Biden as it is anything else.
Bill, you've been around. You've been around a long time. You've seen coattails, political coattails over the years. Does Trump's presence in Ohio tomorrow, Saturday, make a difference, do you think? Will it move the needle for Bernie Marino?
Well, I think that what his presence does is it's going to impact the turnout of the Trump loyalists, acolytes, followers. So I don't know that it moves the needle, but it helps to generate. Well, it depends how much attention it gets. I mean, there's a major golf tournament, and we're getting ready for big college basketball.
Right.
Do we care if these guys come around or not? If they come, so. But it's going to get out there, I suppose, and it's going to help the turnout. I think it helps the turnout, but it also makes the point that this is a race too.
Sure, yeah. But it also attracts national media. I mean,
Oh, yeah, right. Well, because the race is big. The Brown race is big, so that it wouldn't attract national media if this race wasn't like the top race, one of the top races, three races in the country for Senate.
Okay, so let me, in regard to Trump and Marino, let me read the opening paragraph of a CNN story that delved into Bernie Marino's conversion to a Trump disciple. And here's what it says. Bernie Marino, a Republican businessman running for the U.S. Senate in Ohio, once said there was, quote, no scenario in which he would support Donald Trump. He's called Trump a, quote, fake Republican who stokes hatred and suggests that the former president's popularity is the result of ignorance in our society. Yet Trump endorsed Marino. What does that say? I mean, what's going on here?
So when did he say this?
This was years, several years ago.
Well, I don't know. It seems to me that one of the things that Trump responds to, is cash. So Marino has money, knows people who have money, and I think that's how Vance got his attention. Is that California tech guru was a big supporter of Vance, and I think that's what Trump saw rather than Vance. So I would say I would say that's probably one of the reasons that. And the other thing is, it's obvious you want to be, if I wanted to be, or any of you want to be, which you are, but if you wanted to be the Republican nominee in Ohio in a multi-candidate field, that the last story is the path. You do what Vance did. You get Trump to endorse you, and you slide through, and you get elected in a Republican state. So that's my answer. But I think it's probably money. So, or I don't mean anything crooked. I mean contributions and major contributors. With now we have a system where wealthy people can do whatever they want, or buy a pack and spend a couple million if they want to.
Tom, the issue of Marino's past criticism, and also the other candidates, LaRose and Dolan have also, have been critical in the past of Trump, and yet everybody seems to want to embrace him, and Trump seems to ignore the past criticism. Is this what's happening here?
Well, first of all,
I think.
Go ahead.
Let me just answer that. I think LaRose's problem is he doesn't have any money. He doesn't have big financial backers, so he's not an attractive candidate.
Tom?
As my late mother used to say, and he was a Youngstowner, some people are too ignorant to be insulted. I think that Mr. Trump doesn't really care what anyone says about him necessarily, except to give him a chance to fire back. It's like a long match or something. But more importantly to the fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, that Senator Vance initially was not very high on Mr. Trump either. There's a lot of people that had a conversion. It's like Vern Wright used to say, I like to go and win. So if someone's trying to win an election and someone else wants to win an election also, he or she might be inclined to think that that person's favor is worth currying, or that person's example is worth following. I think Dolan's interesting because he has not particularly at all tried to win the favor of the former president. He hasn't tried to alienate him either, I don't think, but he's certainly been his own person, it appears to me. And that's, I think, one thing we're forgetting, not no one in particular, but is that ultimately the object is to get someone who can defeat Sherrod Brown.
Yes. And
the primary is interesting for what it is, but it depends on which person Republicans, the really Republicans that are sincere about their convictions, think is the best position to beat Sherrod Brown. And Sherrod's a hell of a campaigner, although I would say that the Vance election doesn't bode that well necessarily for Mr. Brown either, necessarily this coming November.
But both of you have been involved in politics, Bill from the inside at times, and you, Tom, as a reporter. In the past, the Brown name was magic in Ohio in elections. Has that changed, Tom?
I think it has, because I think that people, the whole trend, we did a story one time with the Plain Dealer about the number of people who've been elected with the last name Brown in both parties to statewide office in the state. At one time we had, I think, 2 Browns in the Supreme Court at the same time, one from each party. I think that's right. And Judge Paul Brown from Youngstown way back when on the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court of Ohio. I think it has. I think people are much more molecular or atomic in their thinking and so forth about these things. And I think that I think this would be a profound study for someone doing sociology to see the profound change in the state that's happening. I'm not sure what the reasons are, but the political patterns of the past don't always apply anymore in many ways, about things like names and things like parts of the state. I was looking at the results, for example, from the Tim Ryan Vance election, and realized that in the Western Reserve, the only counties that Tim Ryan carried were Cuyahoga, Summit, and I believe Lorain.
Yep.
And the core counties, other ones not so. And I think that's interesting in itself, because it wouldn't have been that way, which would suggest to me, by the way, that one reason that Dolan has a unique selling proposition is that he may be able to do pretty well in the Northeast, just like Vance did. But I don't know that for a fact.
Hey, Bill,
yes.
As a political scientist, Ohio, the change in Ohio's politics from when you used to be involved to now? What does that tell you?
The change?
Yeah, because, the past
Well,
is prologue.
Well, we're stepping away from this issue of the names, but of course, Ohio's changed significantly. Some of the older industrial, now de-industrial areas have become have a grievance and have taken up with the Republican cause. I never thought I'd live to see that. I'm sure Tom never thought he'd live to see that. Mahoning, Trumbull County voting fairly regularly Republican now. And then a county like Columbiana, in my day, when Rhodes was running, was a swing county.
Yes.
And sometimes it went Democrat. And it unionized. There's quite a bit of union work on the river. But now it's not a swing county. It's become one of these rural voting counties that goes 60% plus for the Republicans. It's amazing the change that's occurred there. But in other parts of the state, Hamilton County is a Democratic county now. That used to be a motherlode of votes for the Republicans. That's partially because of demographic shift and people. I think a lot of those Republicans moved up to Butler or someplace, didn't they? They're not in Hamilton anymore. But anyway, Hamilton used to be one of the powerhouse Republican urban counties. So things change. And Franklin was more Republican and competitive. Things change.
Yeah. So whoever wins the primary, the Republican primary, will obviously challenge Sherrod Brown, who's been around a long time, has a very, very deep record of public service, unlike J.D. Vance, who, without Donald Trump would not have succeeded in winning over, Tim Ryan. But what does Brown have to do, with his record, in order to push back against this Trump tsunami in Ohio? Bill, want to go?
I don't really know what, if I knew the answer to that, I could become a guru or a high-paid political consultant to be able to tell. Sherrod's probably Sherrod's a good politician. He may not win, but you have to give him. He's been around, he's been elected a lot of offices. He's politically, he's a smart guy, politically skillful. But he's trying to figure that out. He's trying to figure out where he can get some votes. Used to be give votes in the Mahoning Valley. You can't give votes there now. Where am I going to go get my votes? I think he was, I don't know, Tom could speak to this. I thought he was a little, he could have been more in the I think we talked about this. He could have been more in the forefront of the abortion issue when it was on the ballot. Maybe he was, because obviously there was a lot of energy there. A lot of new people got into the. He certainly needs that. He needs that energy that was that campaign and the volunteers that they created. So I assume he's going to try and get that. But my point was, I thought he would be more. Maybe he was. Maybe I just missed it. He wasn't in the forefront of this abortion thing, because I think that's obviously that's a big issue for the Democrats.
Okay. Tom?
I think that he has to maximize turnout, which has been a tough thing to do, as I understand it, in Cuyahoga especially. He has to mobilize labor, even though labor's strength is not what it was in the state, to a greater degree than usual. And I think also he, depending on who the Republican nominee is, he has to make the case. And I'm not saying I'm making this case for him. I'm not. It's a matter of indifference to me what it says and what it doesn't say. That he would see himself placed himself as the more reasonable person to have that job, continue to have that job as a senator. I think that I understand anecdotally he's very good in constituent service as well, which helps some of these rural counties quite a bit. And that's the key to many people getting their reelection, getting their job into reelection and so forth. I think that's it. I also think it depends on the level of enthusiasm Democrats have with the national ticket, which it appears at the moment is at best so-so with turnout and so forth. I also think very strongly that for Senator Brown to get reelected, he's got to get some of those votes back in the Western Reserve. Mm-hmm. Even though the counties have changed somewhat, Youngstown, Mahoning, Trumbull, Warren, and so forth, Portage, especially Portage is a good example right there. That has to happen as well. But whether it can or not, I don't know, because there's so many variables right now about everything with the presidency that we don't know the answer to that.
So can the Democrats, and it could be a tough year for Democrats anyway, but in the November general election, can Democrats gain any political traction by wrapping Ohio Republicans in the $60 million bribery scheme that centered on securing a legislative bailout for 2 Ohio nuclear plants, with then powerful Republican Speaker Larry Householder at the center of all of this? He's been convicted of racketeering and serving a 20-year sentence. Tom, is that an issue that the Democrats could benefit from?
They could try, but it isn't really a federal issue, for one thing. And secondly, I've been amazed, and I've been around for a while anyway. I remember Crofters, for example, in 1970, which was peanuts. I think the level of public outrage about the lack of public outrage about the first energy deal has kind of amazed me. Yep. I don't know why that is. It's been publicized well enough. You have the speaker going to jail for 20 years, which I think was a bit much, frankly, as I've written before. But I think that I think the level. I think people, and Mr. Binning could agree. I think people come to expect politics to be dirtier than politics really even is. So therefore, they act kind of jaded and cynical. Well, that's just the way it is. That happens, and it's been exposed, and someone went to jail. But let's move on. It surprises the heck out of me, especially considering that this involved all parts of the state giving electricity rates and so forth, and the coal power plants down on the river. I doubt that it'll have any effect on the statewide elections myself, unless there's more indictments of someone higher up the food chain, which I don't see happening, but it could happen, I suppose.
But there have been suggestions or stories about Mike DeWine and what he knew, if he knew anything, whether he was told anything by those in his inner circle that Bill knows well. So is that bubbling, do you think?
Well, I think we have to keep in mind the legislature would be more like a litmus test or reactive party to this sort of thing if the governor was in trouble. But I cannot emphasize enough how much gerrymandering has wrecked the legislative process in terms of being critical. And I know it's an old refrain, but it has gotten to the point now where you can say the most ridiculous things in Columbus and ignore the most ridiculous things in Columbus, and there's no payback in your constituency because people just don't have the oomph to make any changes in their House districts, especially. I don't know that it's entirely possible that there could be further things up the food chain with the governor and the lieutenant governor. I don't know any of that to ever happen, but I don't foresee it happening. And that doesn't mean I'm omniscient, but that's just my instinct.
Bill, you know a lot of the players in this.
I do. I know many of them. the ones that are around the line. I don't know anybody in the first, but I know people around the line. I think that it's a state issue, so it's not going to have that much bearing on a Senate. It's not going to reach the Senate campaign because they're not going to, even if there's some more public officials indicted, they're not going to be anybody around these candidates. I don't think Dolan's got anywhere near this. He's the only one that has any state, and LaRose too. But I don't think either one of them are going to get are anywhere near the story. So they're not going to get tagged. But I do want to point out, in my day in politics, the driver of scandal in Ohio, which was the hobby of you people, the newspapers, that's what drove the scandals in Ohio. They'd put their teeth into something. They would dig deep. They wouldn't give up, and it was on the front page of the papers, and everybody got a paper, and that's how people got their news. Today, I have no idea how people get any. I bet you maybe, I don't know what the number would be, but I bet you very few people in Ohio even have any idea that this scandal existed, or that this speaker who is in jail, or that DeWine, they didn't tell them about. I don't think people. It's hard to get any news. There isn't any. I've been in the airport the last couple of days. I couldn't buy a damn newspaper. I was in the Atlanta airport. I couldn't find the Wall Street Journal. It's unbelievable. Or the Atlanta Constitution, or whatever the major local paper was. It's unbelievable. And I was on planes. I never saw anybody reading a newspaper. They got screens. They're playing games or watching the movie on a screen. So that's what. But in my opinion, as a political operator, that it was the newspapers that were the drivers of the scandal in Ohio, and I think that's one of the reasons this scandal it never got the attention of the public. I don't think they're just jaded; they're just confused, and Lord knows. And there's so many sources of conflicting information.
Yeah.
That if you're just an average citizen, you don't know what to think about anything.
And there was a time when newspapers were believed. They were seen as the arbiters of truth. And
they would dig in and get and find the facts of the scandal and get them out. Exactly. Nobody's doing that.
And Tom, following up on Doc Binning's obituary of newspapers, the Plain Dealer and several other major newspapers in Ohio have endorsed Dolan.
Yes,
in the Senate race. Does that make a difference? Is it something that would help him at all, or is it, as Bill says, newspapers are no longer significant in the life of a society?
I can't generalize about that, because even though you think I should, because I have a PhD in journalism, but I think if they're not significant, then you have to wonder why campaigns cite endorsements all the time,
right?
Especially in the case of Mr. Dolan. I had to do some research on this indirectly from my master's thesis, and it did show, again, it was a different era. As Bill said, newspapers everywhere. It did show that, particularly in judgeship elections, this was nationwide, and in races that were quote unquote nonpartisan, endorsements can make a substantial difference, or at least a measurable difference in the electability of a candidate. I think that it isn't so much the endorsement itself can make a difference, although maybe it does. I just don't know in this current environment. But I think it gives people, if they have a chance to read the endorsement, and some do and some don't, points to ponder about a candidate and his or her situation or qualifications and so forth. I'm going to touch back on that again later, but I think it's open. I have found it interesting, though, that I believe the major papers that have endorsed have been The Blade,
Plain Dealer,
Cleveland.com. I'm not sure who else right now has actually did an endorsement.
Did the Dispatch endorse? Dispatch endorse? Did the Dispatch endorse?
I don't know if they did or not.
I haven't seen it.
I don't believe so. But the fact that, of course, The Blade is pretty feisty anyway, so that's an interesting.
Oh yeah,
they like him. But yeah, I think that the fact that campaigns are citing the endorsements means they think they have some potency there anyway.
Hey, Bill, when you were active, and you were, not shy about seeking the Vindicator's endorsement for your candidates. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, you were, I give you credit for, you know, several of the gubernatorial endorsements we made of Republicans. You know, you sort of made the pitch and did whatever you had to do. What about endorsements today? Do they matter?
Well, I would, well, I don't know about I'm curious about the dispatch. Yeah, I'd rather have an endorsement than not have an endorsement. Uh, but, you know, in in the day for the Republicans, when the Wolves ran the dispatch and they endorsed, then there was never a favorable story about the opponent. The candidate there, Jim Rhodes, couldn't walk on water, and that's what you read for 6 weeks. And that was so endorsements were more than just he's just a column inside the paper. When the paper went all out, especially the dispatch, and sometimes the PD would do that too. And
Right.
a lot of that was regional. It would be our candidate against the Cleveland, or the Columbus candidate against the Cleveland candidate, who usually was a Democrat. So yeah, endorsements. But I think they still matter. But how much do they matter? That none of us know if or at least I don't know, and you don't think so, that the dispatch endorsed or didn't endorse. But yeah, in fact, we used to take them. We wanted it early so we could make a radio ad out of it.
Yes, yes. And you know, and it worked. I mean, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that
Paper says this guy's a smart guy and a good guy. He's going to do a lot for whatever.
right. Well, as I said at the beginning, before we sign off, I'd like each of you to predict or make a prediction and even give me some percentage numbers. But let me change before we sign off and talk about YSU, because Tom, you know, you have connections to Youngstown State, and Bill had been there a long, long time. Now, I know where Brent stood because he wrote a couple of columns about, you know, right-winger Bill Johnson being named president of YSU by a board of trustees appointed by both Republican governors. And it created quite a firestorm in the community, but of course made no difference. He's now in the office. What do you think of that, Tom? What do you think of a member of Congress with no ties to higher education now leading Youngstown State?
Well, I'm kind of conflicted about this because of the fact that I don't know some of the inner politics, and I'd still like to know specifically who made the connection between
Exactly.
Mr. Johnson and Youngstown State. I have a couple of theories, and none of them are any good, probably. But I will say this, I'm from Youngstown.
Yes.
I'm proud of where I'm from. I have a good education and upbringing. I think Youngstown State's absolutely crucial
Yes.
in its future to the region. I really do. I'm not a razzmatazz sis-boom bar guy, but that's what I think. And so I guess the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I have to say that in higher education in general, sometimes leadership is crucially important, not for what it is, but for what it's not. And I think, for example, to have Jim Tressel be such a success as I gather he was, all things considered, he had no particular background in higher education administration. And by most accounts, was very popular. Again, given the ups and downs of labor relations, I don't know. But I think some more time has to elapse before we see how the new president does before I can say much about it one way or the other. That's my own opinion. Bill would know much more because he was inside the cloister and knows what's there particularly, and hears things I'm sure from other former colleagues.
So, Bill, this cringeworthy appointment has of Bill Johnson, whom you know, and is close to your old pal Dave Johnson, the chairman of the Columbiana County Republican Party, who denies he had anything to do with Bill Johnson being president of YSU. has opened the door to the 6th congressional district seat. And Michael Ruley is, appears to be the anointed one. So give me your take on that.
Well, I've come to the view in the last week or two that that this gentleman Reggie Sturgoltz, or whatever his name is, from Canton, who's taken a very conservative position, and he's attracted numerous active conservatives, even in Columbiana County, where Ruley is, you would think, would be the strongest, and he's taking on, he's running very nasty ads, going back to, I'm not certain, transgender issues, boys going into girls' bathrooms,
right?
One, and that's the core of his campaign. He's claiming that he's raising all kinds of, from the perspective of the right, character issues about Ruley. But he's spending. I didn't think he's getting money. Spending some money. So is he up? He's up on TV quite a bit.
Right, he is.
And so I don't know. It might turn out to be a close race. I mean, like you, I just assumed, up until very recently, that Ruley was a stone winner. I guess he's still. I think he's still going to likely win. He's going to, he has strong name ID in Mahoning, and in Columbia, much more than this other gentleman does. But I don't know whether these attack ads, which really doesn't seem to be responding to.
No.
Whether that's going to work. So I think it's going to turn out. I think it might be a race. But I mean, I'd still pick Ruley to win. But I think it's surprising to me that I even think it's a race. But that's because the guy's got money, and he's gone very negative. I think right from the get-go, he's been very negative because he knows Ruley's the front runner, and he's not very well known. I think he has a picture of him reading the Bible to his daughters in the ad. Nothing wrong with that, Bertram. Shouldn't be laughing at that.
But it is noteworthy that how all these Republican candidates wrapping themselves around, not only religion, but gay rights, and all of these right-wing issues. My God, I, like you, I've been around, and Tom been around Republican candidates for 40 years. And it just seems to me that these are now, if you wanted to talk about a platform, the only platform these Republicans are running on is, who can be the more right-wing candidate in a race. Right, Tom?
I think so, but I want to touch base for a minute on the Mr. Ruley race.
Go ahead, please.
It seems to me that I assume, but don't know, that he's Catholic, and of course he's Italian-American.
Yeah, he's Catholic.
And I believe that if you look at the demographics of the district, which includes Belmont County, which has a significant and large number of Italian-American voters, and Mahoning, which likewise has a large number of Italian-American voters, I'm not sure in which party they're in, but I think he stands a pretty good chance of winning, frankly, the nomination. Now, again, I don't know the demographics of the primary audience, so to speak, but that's what I think right now.
That's a good point.
I think it's been probably in the minds of some people overdue to have an Italian-American in that job. Although I guess Congressman Traffican was Italian-American, it wasn't so much an obvious thing with him as it was with Mr. Ruley.
Right.
I think that's true.
And Ruley has name.
I still take Ruley to win. I'm just surprised that it turned out to be a race. Because this guy, this Reggie, comes from nowhere. He's only a little piece of Stark County. He's in the district. He's not really known.
Yeah.
And the positions he has taken, in the ads, will resonate with some Republican voters, right?
Oh, certainly they will.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I haven't seen him shooting a machine gun yet. I saw an ad in West Virginia. One of the gubernatorial candidates is firing a machine gun. And I thought that was a good ad.
Gentlemen, it's going to be interesting to watch to see what happens on Tuesday. But before we leave, and again, thank you both for your time. And I hope after the primary, at some point, we'll get together again to do autumn. But before we go, give me your prediction on the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate. And if you so want to, throw me a number as to what you think. Tom?
Well, I would have covered my big backside by asking Bill to go first, because I think he probably knows better than I do what the situation really is.
Yeah, I know it is.
But something tells me, and of course, if I were right, I would have won the lottery a long time ago, that Mr. Dolan's going to win by a hair. Close, but enough to get the nomination. But I could well be wrong about that. But that's my instinct at the moment.
Okay. And Bill?
Well, I hope Tom is right, but I don't think so. I think Marino, but I think there's going to be a recount. Marino in a recount.
But you said, and I'm going to press you on this. You hope Tom was right, and Tom.
Yeah. Well, I did. I don't claim to be some journalist that doesn't have political views. I mean, I'm a longstanding Republican activist, and I can have a point of view. And I would.
And your point of view is Dolan would be the better nominee.
Yeah, because we're taking people. We did this last time. One of the things to consider is that the Republicans did this last time, or did it recently, or maybe they took a car dealer off the bench who had a lot of money, never been in politics, and put him out there, and he got beat because he doesn't know the first thing about campaigning or politics. The Republicans are doing it again, taking a guy who's made his dough. When he sell luxury cars or something, right? And has never run for office, has no political experience. Apparently doesn't even have consistent views from what you've said, Bertram.
Right.
And so they're running a big risk, I think. Like, I don't know why. In the old, I hate to talk about the oldest, but political experience matters not now. We're just, and the Republicans are as bad or worse than the Republicans. They're taking these rookies.
Yes.
Off the bench who have money, and this is a trophy. It's a trophy campaign. Well, I made $1 gazillion of selling fancy cars, and now I want to be senators. To me, easy work. That's a lot easier than being governor. Who was the last guy? Who was a car dealer? Ran, got crushed.
Yeah.
I
can't remember.
It's the same thing. He nominated him, and he got. I mean, he was from Northeast Ohio too. More, and I think it's a big mistake to do for them to be doing that. They should be taking people who have some experience in politics, because there's some basic things you need to know and some people you need to know today, that like you always did, and they don't know what to do and they don't know who to see. So
when you say Marino in a read.
Well, I think it's going to be I say that because it's going to be like Vance. I think Trump's going to bring the guy over. What's that other?
But Trump would be the one would be the difference maker then. For Marino.
Oh yeah. That's the thing. If he's the nominee, Trump did it.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you again, both of you, and I'll be in touch for after the primary. We can get together again.
Okay, thank you.
Best to both of you. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Good seeing you, Tom. Bye.
Bye, Tom. Bye, Bill.
Bye.
Bye.